Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, good whatever time of the day it is, wherever in the world you are. Stuff's falling off my desktop here. You are really lucky you can't see what a ghastly mess this desk is. Anyway, hello. Let me think. Anything else I needed? No, I think I've got everything going here. Anyway, hi. I'm Tad. I'm going to be reading. You are people, I'm assuming. Not necessarily. I mean, and I am in no way prejudiced. If you are animal, vegetable, furniture, it's all good. Anyway, I am here. It is 1 minute after 1 o'clock in the morning here in California. I am going to be here for about the next hour, reading from The Dragonbone Chair, written by moi, which is why I read from these things, because I wrote them, so I don't have to get permission from anybody. So it's all good. Anyway, hoping you are well. We're doing pretty well here. Here, let me fix my... Yeah, I realize the problem is not my glasses. The problem is one of my ears is higher than the other. Isn't that sad? And it really... why can't they just make glasses where one earpiece is higher than the other to go with people like me whose ears are slightly crooked? Because I'm assuming that I'm not the only person in the world whose one ear is slightly higher than the other. In fact, every single owl in the entire world has one ear higher than the other. I don't know if you knew that, but it's true. Owls tend to have one ear, kind of up here, and then the other ear is kind of down here more. Although in an owl face, obviously, it sticks out more. So, but anyway, and that's true though, that owls have ears at different heights, because that way it makes them easier to locate things by sound. And owls do some of their hunting by sound, obviously by sight also, which is why they've got big owl eyes. But having their ears slightly not symmetrical aids them in the location of sounds. So you might think about that the next time you're feeling all smug about yourself because both of your ears are the same height. That, if you were a mouse in the grass, I would probably be better at finding you than if the situation was reversed and you have symmetrical ears and I was a mouse. So think about that before you get all smug. Anyway, what am I going to tell you? I'm not sure what I'm going to tell you tonight because I'm just completely confused. Not by anything, just life. And nothing particular out of the ordinary, just the kind of continuing rolling and tumbling process of everything. Oh, I will tell you this, starting off. I don't know 100% that I'm going to be reading next weekend because I am going to be probably at my folks' house, and I have no idea what the setup is there in terms of... I know they got Wi-Fi. My dad has Wi-Fi. But I don't know what the situation is. I don't know how good the Wi-Fi is. I don't know, how well it's going to work. I don't know if I'm going to be able to test it ahead of time. I may try, but just to let you know, I will try to figure it out. But please check on my social media on the actual day to see, because I will have had a chance, presumably before I make an announcement, to test out and see if I can do my broadcast from there. Broadcast is a very fancy word for this. My reading, whatever you want to call it. So since I'm not sure and I do have house sitting duty, I will have to check in and see. By the way, did you see my dragon at the beginning? Boop, 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 boop. My very fine dragon, which lives in the office here with me. Dum, da-da. Yes, Dilva, you gave it to me. I'm showing people it because it's such a fine dragon. Anyway, so what else is there? When I haven't been writing, I actually, as I think I've mentioned several times, because I'm in this kind of final thrashing end stage of Navigator's Children, and there's a tremendous amount of information that needs to be conveyed to the readership. and there is a large amount of things that have to be woven together. So as a result, I worry in situations like this about, making it all too clunky or having things happen too fast or, not properly explaining these things that I've been setting up for page after page, chapter after chapter, book after book. So I've actually been reading it, the last 10 chapters or so I've written today, and we'll probably be doing that also part of tomorrow as well before going back to the actual writing. And I'm relieved to say that so far it seems to be working. This is only my judgment, of course, but that's the only judgment you're really going to get until my publishers and Deborah have a crack at it. Sometimes they will say, this didn't work, this didn't work. Other times they won't, and I'll only see afterward that somebody should have told me that there was a problem with something. But anyway, so I'm just been rereading it, and so far it seems to be working. I seem to be getting through this phase of the story where there are zillions of threads to be connected, without making it too depressingly information heavy. So we shall see. Because there's also, there's a lot of stuff that's happening that also is character stuff. So characters have to have a chance. You can't just throw things out. You have to see the characters. You have to feel them react. It has to make sense. It can't just be happening because the plot needs it. It has to be happening because it feels appropriate. So anyway, what I'm telling you here is basically true at all stages of writing the book. This is just a different set of problems, but there's always things that you're dealing with. As any of you out there who are writers are already aware, at every stage of every project, there are strange things you have to deal with. So, but anyway, I'm just feeling slightly relieved after having gone back and read a big chunk of what I've written in the last month or so, to see that so far it kind of works so far. Anyway, what else did I want to talk about? We're in the mode. Family is in the mode, and we're kind of just getting stuff done that needs to be done, and taking care of business and taking care of family stuff and all that. So we're all okay here. The dogs, have to say, dogs are a bit freaky deaky, because mostly me, but either Deborah or I are oftentimes gone at the moment. I'm staying over several nights a week at my folks' house, and Deborah has also done that a few times. And so as a result, that you can see the big dog in particular, who's the worrying dog. The big dog is going like, are they getting a divorce? Why is one of them always gone? Don't they care about each other anymore? And what about us? He's a very worrying dog, Johnny is. But not the funny thing. Well, it is kind of funny. It's cute anyway. The thing is, when I come back, they're just like right there. And one is tiny, which is Walter. Walter is like 5 pounds of Chihuahua. He's a tiny, skinny little guy. And Johnny is not a gigantic dog, but, he's a good 70, 80 pounds. So, they both climb in on top of me when I get back from somewhere and don't want to leave. And in fact, Johnny is kind of basically, he just flops his big doggy butt down on me to make sure he knows where I am. If Deborah is in the room, he will put his butt on one of us and put his front paws on the other one to make sure that he has a good idea of where everybody is in the room. So both dogs are really flippy dippy over the last few weeks, because of course you can't explain to them what exactly is happening. They just know they keep seeing the hated overnight suitcase, which they know means travel. And in the past, oftentimes meant I was going away for 2 weeks or so, or more sometimes. So Johnny in particular hates that like sin and perdition. Johnny just hates the suitcase. And even though I've been going in shorter stretches, I've been doing it quite frequently in the last several weeks. And So they're very nervous, and it comes out in all kinds of strange and funny ways. The bad one is when Johnny wants attention, and I'm like lying there trying to nap or something after a long day, and he comes up and goes plunk on my face with his giant paw, which is painful. But other than that, it mainly just inspires me to feel sympathy for them, because they are very pack oriented, and we are their pack, and two of their pack have already moved out, and so they're, you know, and then when half the time either Deb or I are gone, they're quite bereft and confused. So anyway, I don't know why I'm telling you all that. I'm just babbling as usual. So I'm going to check in and say hello to the people who are already here, and then I am going to read. That's the plan. So let me see who's here. First off, Herr Junangst. Herr Junangst? Yeah. Hello. Wouter, good to see you. Good morning, good morning. Home improvement is always good. We've been doing a lot of that lately. Home improvement is a good thing. So you do that. It's always satisfying, and especially as one gets to be more kind of seasoned, one becomes vintage, antique. One's home becomes more and more important, and doing things in one's home begins to, for me anyway, has become much more important and much more central in my life, you know, than it was when I was younger, when I basically just wanted to get out and meet people and cause trouble. Anyway, so that was Wouter. I was just saying hello to Penny. Hello, Penny. Ty, good morning to you, sir. Iris, good to see you, and good day. Ilva, darling, hello, hello. A cold autumn morning in an unheated house. That doesn't sound like a good plan. Well, wrap up in a blanket, and I will try to read warmly. Petra, good morning from you and Christina in sunny Berlin. Ooh, lovely. Good to hear from you. Kobe, 9 a.m. Scotland. Well, 9:13 now, but hello, Scotland. I miss you. I haven't seen you in several years, and only got to be in Glasgow, for just a few days, which was not enough. I love Scotland. Debbie, good morning. Going out, that's okay, but thank you for checking in. Holger, kind regards from currently sunny Waldesruhe. And that sounds good to me. And Mark is checking in from Yorkshire, where it is a delightful sunny Sunday morning, Mark says. Nicole. Hello, Nicole. And Nicole. I'll say it with the correct pronunciation. Mademoiselle ou Madame Nicole Grasse. Hello and good morning. Kobe. Hello. Good. Good to see you. Julian. Good morning, good morning. Ty. Oh, getting all snooty about your equally leveled ears, huh? Okay, yeah, just make me feel bad just because my ears are different height. They're not even that different. Look, you can see it, just slightly different, but just enough to make it so my glasses are always... That, and of course the fact that I've got the camera flipped. See, that side of my room is actually that side of my room. In other words, as I'm sitting here, that lamp, okay, that lamp is actually over my right shoulder. This is my right shoulder. You see how that works? No. Yeah, okay, so that's my right shoulder. So for me, it's... Anyway, don't worry about it. It's not mirrored, so it confuses me. So every time I'm adjusting my glasses, I always go the wrong direction first. Like anybody cares. Okay, who have I not said hello to yet? I am full of uselessness today. Oh yeah, Ty was just bragging about equally leveled ears. Kobe says, good band name, Smug Mouse. All right, Andre, hello, how are you? Mark sends an owl. Kristen, hello, Kristen. Good to see you. All right. And Winter, waving but can't hang around. Well, that's okay. You came in. You can always listen to it later, watch it later, if you're a glutton for punishment. But it's nice that you dropped in anyway. So hello, chilly Wellington. That's right, because it's, well, but it should be springtime. Springtime for Wellington, right? No, not quite yet. It's the end of winter, of course. Okay, hello. Who else have I not said hello to? Chris, checking in from Denmark again. Hello, hello. Janet, good evening from Sydney, says Janet. Won't be able to stay. Hubby's cooking dinner. That's a good thing to do, to get hubbies trained to cook dinner. Rosalba, good morning. Rosalba is checking in from Italy. Chelsea Jean Reese Robinson says Tadford. And I will answer to Tadford. I will answer virtually anything. And happily. Suzanne, good morning. Suzanne's checking in from Yorkshire. And Sally, good morning, good morning. How are you? Looking good. I don't know exactly what you're referring to. Probably not me, but if you are, I will take it as it's intended. The only thing I don't like about doing this is because of the way the whole thing's set up, I wind up looking at my own face for most of an hour, except when I'm reading, which is why you don't see me looking up much when I'm reading. Because who the hell needs to see themselves all the time? It's so funny when I go out and do book tours and stuff, which of course I haven't been doing lately because of COVID. But when I go out and do book tours in bookstores and stuff, oftentimes people will want to take a picture with me, which is absolutely fine with me. I'm honored that anybody wants to take a picture with me, like I was a real person or something. And but one of the things people always do is then they go, "Here, do you want to see it?" And I'm like, God, no. I mean, if you're happy with it, that's fine. I already, when I'm on a book tour, I'm already having to like see my face on things and sometimes do photo shoots where I feel like a complete prat and stuff like that. And then the last thing I want to do is see me grinning like an idiot in a selfie. Plus, I always get into these weird positions. I don't know what it is. I always wind up kind of leaning over or sometimes tipping my head to one side. And I'm always going, why did I do that? Anyway, what can I say? The world of the professional writer is full of insecurities. Who haven't I said hello to yet? Who have I missed? Muriel, good morning from Belgium. Wow, we're getting a really nice grouping here of people all over. Italy, Belgium, Denmark, Berlin, Yorkshire, several others. Wellington, New Zealand, and Italy. This is a good one. I like this. This is a nice spread. Anyway, okay, so as usual, I've wasted a huge amount of time, and now I'm going to read. So, thank you for your indulgence. I wish I had some more interesting things to share with you, but our family is just kind of picking up the pieces after a quite horrifying, shocking turn of events this summer, or late summer. And I mean, I didn't even talk to any of my friends really for weeks and stuff like that. So I don't really have much of a life at the moment except for writing and doing family stuff that has to be done. And so as a result, I don't have a lot of news. That's why I'm talking about dogs and owls. That's the other thing, is that Deb and I watch a lot of, science videos and things like that. So that's why and we have owls. We have quite a nice collection of owls here in the household. I'll just explain this quickly and then I'll start reading. We know that we have great horned owls. We have barn owls, which are quite lovely, ghostly looking things. And of course, when, one just suddenly flies past you silently, out of the night, and you're sitting outside, it's quite startling because they're big and their faces are very flat and ghost-like looking. And of course, utterly, utterly silent. And then we also have screech owls. So between all of those and the local hawks and stuff, it's predator central around our place, and we're fascinated by it, of course. we love the place where we live and the fact that we've got critters of various sorts that we can, you know, watch and listen to and observe. Anyway, okay, enough about owls, for God's sakes. Chapter 20, The Shadow of the Wheel. Oh, by the way, what happened here is that Simon was with Benedict. They thought they were going to stop at St. Hodorin's Abbey and be guests, you know, of this abbey for the night. Got there, found out it had been burned down, and the monks had been massacred, except for 3 monks, Hengfisk and the somewhat unpleasant Hengfisk, Brother Langrian, and Brother Dochias. And Dochias has just scared the crap out of Simon by talking about the white foxes and various other things and black wagons and all these things that Simon himself had just seen. So, and Simon has now run away from the dying Brother Dochias. Chapter 20, The Shadow of the Wheel. He was standing on the open plain at the center of a vast, shallow bowl of grass, a speck of pale, upright life in the midst of an endless riot of green. Simon had never felt quite so exposed, so naked to the sky. The field sloped up and away from him. The horizon on all sides made a tight seal of grass and stone-gray sky. After a span that could have been moments or years in such impersonal, fixed timelessness, the horizon was breached. With the ponderous creak of a ship of war under heavy wind, a dark object appeared above the rim that was the outermost limit of Simon's view. It rose and rose, impossibly tall, until its shadow fell across Simon at the valley's depth. The shadow's impact was so sudden that it seemed almost to resound as it struck, a deep, reverberating hum that shook Simon's bones. The great bulk of the thing came clear against the sky as it stood for a long moment, poised on the valley's edge. It was a wheel, a huge black wheel as tall as a tower. Sunk in the twilight of its shadow, Simon could only gape as it began to turn with excruciating deliberateness, to slowly roll down the long green slope, spouting flayed gouges of sod behind it. Simon stood frozen in its awful path as it ground on as inexorable as the millstones of hell. Now it was over him, rim foremost, a black trunk stretching to the firmament, raining turf down all round. The ground beneath Simon's feet pitched forward as the weight of the wheel tipped the bed of the earth. He stumbled, and as he found his balance, the black rim was upon him. As he stared, mute and horrified, a gray shadow passed before his eyes, a gray shadow with a flashing core. A sparrow, flying madly past with some bright thing caught up in its curling grip. He flicked his eyes to follow, and then, as if it had somehow caught at his heart in its swift passage, he flung himself after it, out of reach of the plunging wheel. But even as he dove and the wall-wide rim smashed down, Simon's pant leg was snagged by a burning cold nail protruding from the great wheel's outer edge. The sparrow, only inches away, fluttered free, spiraling up, gray on gray against the slate sky like a moth, its glinting burden disappearing with it into the twilight. A great voice spoke. "You have been marked." The wheel took Simon and tumbled him, shook him like a hound breaking a rat's neck. Then it rolled on, yanking him high up into the air. Dangling, he was pulled skyward, the ground rocking and pitching beneath his head like a pulsing green sea. The wind of the wheel's passage was all around him as he rose, circling toward the apex. The blood sang in his ears. Scrabbling with his hands in the grass and mud that clotted the broad rim, Simon pulled himself painfully upright, riding the wheel as though it were the back of some cloud-tall beast. He rose, ever nearer to the arching sky. He reached the top and, for a moment, sat perched at the world's summit. All the spreading fields of Ostenard were visible beyond the rim of the valley. The sunlight lanced through the dim sky to touch on the battlements of a castle and onto a beautiful shining spire, the only thing in the world that seemed as tall as the black wheel. He blinked, seeing something familiar in its sweeping line, but even as it began to come clear, the wheel ground on, pushing him over the top, then pulling him swiftly toward the ground, so far below. He struggled with the nail, ripping at his pants leg to work himself loose, but somehow he and the nail became one. He could not break free. The ground leaped up. The two, Simon and the virgin green earth, were rushing together with a noise like the horns of the final day booming through the valley. He struck. The two came together, and the wind and the light and the music blew away like a candle flame. Suddenly, Simon was in darkness, deep in earth which parted before him like water. There were voices around him, slow, halting voices that issued from mouths full of choking dirt. Who enters our house? Who comes to disturb our sleep, our long sleep? They will steal from us. The thieves will take from us our quiet and our dark beds. They will drag us up again through the bright gate. As the mournful voices cried, Simon felt hands clutch at him, hands as cold and dry as bone, or as wet and soft as burrowing roots, stretching, twining fingers reaching out to catch him up to empty breasts. But they could not stop him. The wheel rolled, grinding him downward ever farther, until the voices died behind him, and he was sliding through gelid, silent darkness. Darkness. Where are you, boy? Are you dreaming? I can almost touch you. It was Priretes' voice that suddenly spoke, and he felt the malevolent weight of the alchemist's thoughts behind it. I know who you are. Morghanes' boy, a scullion, a meddler. You have seen things that you should not have seen, kitchen boy, trifled with things beyond you. You know far too much. I will search you out. Where are you? And then there was a greater darkness, a shadow beneath the shadow of the wheel. And deep in that shadow, two red fires bloomed, eyes that must have gazed from a skull horribly full of flame. No, mortal, a voice said, and in his head it had the sound of ashes and earth and the mute, unvoiced end of things. No, this is not for you. The eyes flared, full of curiosity and glee. We will take this one, priest. Simon felt Priretes' hold slipping away, the alchemist's power withering before the dark thing. Welcome, it said. This is the Storm King's house, here beyond the darkest gate. What is your name? And the eyes fell in like crumbling embers, and the emptiness behind them burned colder than ice, hotter than any fire, and darker than any shadow. No! Simon thought he shouted, but his mouth, too, was full of earth. I won't tell you. Perhaps we will give you a name. You must have a name, little fly, little dust speck, so that we will know you when we meet. You must be marked." "No!" He tried to struggle free, but the weight of 1,000 years of earth and stone were upon him. "I don't want a name! I don't want a name! I don't want a name from you!" Even as his last cry echoed out through the trees, Binabik was crouching over him, a look of real concern etched on his face. The weak morning sunlight, sourceless and directionless, filled the glade. "A madman, and one near death I have already to nurse," Binabik said as Simon sat up. "And now you must start shouting in your sleep as well?" He wanted it to be a joke, but the morning was too cold and thin to support the attempt. Simon was shivering. "Oh, Binabik, He felt a trembling, sickly smile come to his face, forced out by the simple fact of being in the light, of being on top of the ground. "I had a terrible, terrible dream." "I am not very surprised," the troll said, and squeezed Simon's shoulder. "A terrible day yesterday would not, by chance alone, lead to less than restful sleeping." The little man straightened up. "If you like, be free to find something to eat in my bag. I am attending the 2 monks. He pointed to the dark shapes on the far side of the campfire. The nearer one, who Simon guessed was Langrian, was wrapped in a dark green cloak. "Where is—" Simon remembered the name after a few moments. Hengfisk. His head was pounding, and his jaw throbbed as though he had been cracking nuts with his teeth. "The unpleasant Rimmer's man, who, in fairness, it is necessary to say, did give his cloak for warming Langrian, is off searching in the wreckage of his home for food and such things. I must be returning to my wards, Simon, if you are feeling better." "Oh, certainly. How are they?" "Langrian, I have pleasure to say, is much improved." Binabik gave a little nod of satisfaction. "He has been sleeping quietly for some long time. Oh, a claim you cannot also be making, The troll smiled. "Brother Dochai sadly is beyond my help, but he is not sick except in his fearful thoughts. Him I have given something to help sleep also. Now, please forgive, I must look at Brother Langrian's dressings." Binabik stood and stumped off around the fire pit, stepping over Kantaka, who lay sleeping near the warm stones, and whose back Simon had previously taken for another large rock. The wind lightly fingered the leaves of the oak tree above his head as Simon riffled through Binabik's bag. He pulled out one small sack that felt as though it might contain breakfast, but even before he opened it, a clinking noise told him it held the strange bones he had seen before. A further search turned up smoked, dried meat, wrapped in a rough cloth, but as soon as he had the package open, he realized that the last thing he wanted to do was put food of any kind into his churning stomach. "Is there any water, Binabik? Where's your skin?" "Better, Simon," the troll called from his crouch over Brother Langrian. "A stream there is, just a short walk down this way." He pointed, then reached down and tossed Simon the skin bag. "Filling this will be a help for me." As Simon picked up the skin, he saw his twin bundles lying nearby. On an impulse, he caught up the rag-wrapped manuscript and brought it with him as he walked down to the stream. The streamlet moved sluggishly, and its eddies were clogged with twigs and leaves. Simon had to clear a space before he could lean down and bring up handfuls of water to splash his face. He scrubbed hard with his fingers. It felt as though the smoke and blood of the ruined abbey's ending had worked its way into every pore. Afterward, he drank several great swallows, then filled Binabik's bag. He sat down on the bank, and his mind turned to the dream that had cloaked his thoughts like a dank mist since he had arisen. Like Brother Dochaeus' wild words of the night before, the dream had raised dreadful shadows in Simon's heart, but the daylight was even now melting them away like unquiet ghosts, leaving only a residue of fear. All he remembered was the great black wheel as it had borne down upon him. All else was gone, leaving black, empty spots in his mind, doors of forgetfulness he could not open. Still, he knew that he was caught up in something larger than just the struggle of royal brothers, greater even than the death of that good old man Morgenes, or the slaughter of a score of holy men. These were all but eddies of some larger, deeper current, or rather, small things crushed by the heedless turning of a mighty wheel. His mind could not grasp what it all might mean, and the more he thought, the more elusive such ideas became. He only understood that he had fallen beneath the wheel's broad shadow, and, if he were to survive, he must harden himself to its dreadful revolutions. Slumped on the bank, the thin fizz of the insects who hovered over the stream filling the air, Simon unwrapped the pages of Morgenes' Life of Prester John and began to leaf through it. He had not looked at it in some time, due to long marching and early bedtime once camp was made. He pulled apart some of the pages where they had stuck to each other, reading a sentence here, a handful of words there, not caring so much what it said as indulging in the comforting memory of his friend. Staring at the script, he remembered the old man's slender, blue-veined hands, nimble and clever as nest-building birds. A passage caught his eye. It was on a page following a crude hand-drawn map that the doctor had titled at the bottom, "The Battlefield at Nerula." The sketch itself was of little interest, as for some reason the old man had not bothered to label any of the armies or landmarks, nor had he included an explanatory caption. The subsequent text, however, leaped out at him, an answer of a sort to thoughts that had been plaguing him since the awful discovery of the day before. "Neither war nor violent death," Morgenes had written, "have anything uplifting about them. Yet they are the candle to which humanity flies again and again as complacently as the lowly moth. He who has been upon a battlefield and who is not blinded by popular conceptions will confirm that on this ground mankind seems to have created a hell on earth out of sheer impatience, rather than waiting for that original to which, if the priests are correct, most of us will eventually be ushered. Still, it is the field of war that determines those things that God has forgotten, accidentally or not, what mortal can know, to order and arrange. Hence, it is often the arbiter of divine will, and violent death is its law scribe." Simon smiled and drank a little water. He remembered very well Morgenes' habit of comparing things to other things, like people to bugs and death to a wrinkly old archive priest. Usually these comparisons had been beyond Simon, but sometimes, as he strained to follow the twists and turns of the old man's thoughts, a meaning had come clear all of a sudden, like a curtain drawn from in front of a sunny window. "John Presbyter," the doctor had also written, "was without doubt one of the greatest warriors of the age, and without that ability would never have risen to his final royal state. But it was not his battling that made him a great king. Rather, it was his use of the tools of kingship that battling brought into his hands, his statecraft and his example to the common people. In fact, his greatest strengths on the field of combat were his worst failings as High King. In the pitch of battle he was a fearless, laughing killer, a man who destroyed the lives of those who came against him with the cheerful enjoyment of an Utniate hedge baron arrow-feathering a buck deer. As a king he was sometimes prone to quick action and heedlessness, and it was in that way he very nearly lost the battle of Elvritsala Dale, and did lose the goodwill of the conquered Rimmersgarders. Simon frowned as he traced along the passage. He could feel sunlight slipping down through the trees to heat the back of his neck. He knew he really should get the water skin back to Benebik, but it had been so long since he had sat quietly by himself, and he was most curiously surprised to read Morgenes apparently speaking ill of the golden, indomitable Prester John, a man who figured in so many songs and stories that only the name of Osiris Adon was better known in all the world, and that not by a long measure. By contrast, the passage continued, the one man who was Josua's match on the field of war was his virtual opposite, Cameres Sa Vinita, last prince of the Nabanai royal house and brother of the current duke, was a man to whom war seemed only another fleshly distraction. Astride his horse Atarin, and with the great sword Thorn in his hand, he was probably the most deadly man in our world. Yet he took no pleasure from battle, and his great skill was only a burden, in that his mighty reputation brought many against him who would otherwise have had no cause, and forced him to kill when he would not. It is said in the Book of the Adon that when the priests of Euvenis came to arrest holy Osiris, he went willingly. But when they purposed to take also his acolytes, Sutrines and Granus, Osiris Adon would not have it, and slew the priests with a touch of his hand. He wept at the slaying, and blessed their bodies. So it was with Cameres, if so sacrilegious a comparison can be made. If anyone approached the terrible power and universal love which Mother Church imputes to Osiris, Cameres was that one, a warrior who killed with no hatred for his enemies, and yet was the most terrifying fighter of this or probably any other. Simon, will you please come quickly? I need water, and I am needing it now. The sound of Benebik's voice, harsh with urgency, made Simon jump guiltily. He scrambled up the bank toward the camp. But Cameres was a great fighter. All the songs described him laughing heartily as he hewed the heads from the wild men of the Thrithings. Shem used to sing one, Simon thought. How did it go? He gave them the left side. He gave them the right side. He shouted and he sang as they ran and showed their backside. Cameres came a-laughing. Cameres came a-fighting. Cameres came a-riding through the battle of the Thrithings. As he emerged from the brush, Simon saw in the bright sunlight how had the sun gotten so high? That Hengfisk had returned, and that he and Benebik were crouching over the supine form of Brother Langrian. Here, Benebik. Simon handed the skin bag to the kneeling troll. It was a fine long time you were, Benebik began, then broke off, shaking the water bag. Half full, he said, and the look on his face made Simon blush with shame. I had just drunk some when you called, he offered. Hengfisk turned a reptilian eye on him and scowled. Well, Benebik said, returning to Langrian, who looked much rosier than Simon remembered. Climbed is climbed, fallen is fallen. I think our friend here is to be improving. He lifted the bag and squirted a few drops of water into Langrian's mouth. The unconscious monk coughed and sputtered for a moment. Then his throat moved convulsively as he swallowed. "Do you see?" Bennebeck asked proudly. "It is the wound on the head that I believe I am." Before Bennebeck could finish his explanation, Langrian's eyes fluttered open. Simon heard Hengfisk suck in a sharp breath. Langrian's gaze wandered blearily over the faces that hovered above him. Then his eyes fell shut again. "More water, troll!" hissed Hengfisk. "What I am doing here is what I know, Rimmersman," Bennebeck replied with icy dignity. "You were already performing your duty when you pulled him from the ruins. Now I am at performing mine, and need no suggestions." As he spoke, the little man trickled water past Langrian's cracked lips. After some moments, the monk's thirst-swollen tongue pushed out of his mouth, like a bear coming up from a winter's sleep. Bennebeck moistened it with the bag, then dampened a cloth and draped it across Langrian's forehead, which was traced with healing cuts. Finally, the monk opened his eyes again and seemed to focus on Hengfisk. The Rimmersman took Langrian's hand in his. "Heng! Langrian croaked. Hengfisk pressed the damp cloth against his skin. "Don't speak, Langrian. Rest." Langrian turned his eyes slowly from Hengfisk to Bennebeck and Simon, then back to the monk. "Others?" he managed to say. "Rest now. You must rest. This man and I are agreeing at last on something." Bennebeck smiled at his patient. "You should take sleep." Langrian appeared to want to speak more, but before he could, his eyelids slid down as if heeding advice, and he slept. Two things happened that afternoon. The first occurred while Simon, the monk, and the troll were eating a sparse meal. Since Bennebeck had not wanted to leave Langrian, there was no fresh game. The trio made do with dried meat and the products of Simon's and Hengfisk's foraging, berries and a few greenish nuts. As they sat, chewing silently, each wrapped in his own very different thoughts, Simon's an equal mixture of the horrid dream wheel and the triumphant battlefield figures of John and Chimerus, Brother Dochias suddenly died. One moment he was sitting quietly, awake but not eating. He had refused the berries Simon offered him, staring like a mistrustful animal until the boy took them away. And a moment later he had rolled over on his face, quivering at first, and then pitching violently. By the time the others could turn him over, his eyes had rolled up, showing a ghastly white in his dirt-smeared face. A moment later he had quit breathing, although his body remained as rigid as a spar. Shaken as he was, Simon was certain that just before the final passion he had heard Dochias whisper, "Storm King." The words burned in his ears and troubled his heart, although he did not know why, unless he had heard them in his dream. Neither Bennebeck nor the monk said anything, but Simon was sure they had both heard. Hengfisk, to Simon's surprise, wept bitterly over the body. He himself, in some strange way, felt almost relieved, a bizarre emotion that he could neither understand nor quell. Bennebeck was as unreadable as stone. The second thing happened as Bennebeck and Hengfisk were arguing an hour or so later. "And I am agreeing we will help. But you are upon the wrong ledge if you think to order me." Bennebeck's anger was tightly controlled, but his eyes had narrowed to black slashes beneath his brows. "But you will only help bury Dochias. Would you leave the others to be food for wolves?" Hengfisk's anger was not at all controlled, and his eyes pushed out wide and staring in his reddening face. "I tried to help Dochias," the troll snapped. "I failed. We will bury him if that is what you wish. But it is not my plan to be spending 3 days to bury all of your dead brethren. And there are worse purposes, they could serve then food for wolves, and perhaps did while living, some of them. It took a moment for Hengfist to work out Benebik's tangled speech, but when he did, his color grew even brighter, if such was possible. You heathen monster! How can you speak ill of unburied dead, you poisonous dwarf? Benebik smiled, a flat, deadly smile. If your god loves them so, then he has taken their souls, yes, up to heaven, and to be lying around will do harm only to their mortal bodies. Before another word could be spoken, both combatants were startled out of their dispute by a deep growl from Kantaka, who had been napping on the far side of the fire pit beside Langrian. In a moment it became clear what had startled the grey wolf. Langrian was talking. Someone warn the abbot. Treachery? The monk's voice was a harsh whisper. Brother, Hengfist cried, limping quickly to his side, save your strength. Let him speak, Benebik replied. It might be saving our lives, Rimmersman. Before Hengfist could respond, Langrian's eyes were open. Staring first at Hengfist, then at his surroundings, the monk shuddered as though with a chill, despite being wrapped in a heavy cloak. Hengfist? He grated. The others? Are they all dead? Said Benebik plainly. The Rimmersman shot him a hateful glance. Eucyrus has taken them back, Langrian, he said. Only you were spared. I feared it. Can you tell us what happened? The troll leaned forward and put another damp cloth on the monk's forehead. Simon could see now for the first time, behind the blood and scars and sickness, that Brother Langrian was quite young, perhaps not yet 20 years of age. Do not tire yourself too much, Benebik added, but tell us what you know. Langrian closed his eyes again, as if falling back into sleep, but he was only marshalling his strength. There were a dozen or so men who came in sheltering from off the road. He licked his lips. Benebik brought the water bag. Many large parties are traveling these days. We gave them to eat, and Brother Skin Seifa put them up in Traveler's Hall. As he drank water and talked, the monk seemed to slowly gain strength. They were a strange lot. Didn't come down to the main hall that night, except the leader, a pale-eyed man who bore an evil-looking helm and dark armor. He asked if we had heard word of a party of Rimmersmen coming north from Urchester. Rimmersmen? Said Hengfist, frowning. Urchester, thought Simon, racking his brain. Who could it be? Abbot Quincines told the man we had heard of no such party, and he seemed satisfied. The abbot seemed troubled, but of course he did not share his worry with we younger brothers. The next morning, one of the brothers came in from the hill fields to report a company of riders from the south. Strangers seemed very interested, saying that it was the rest of their original party come to meet them. Their pale-eyed leader took his men out to the great courtyard to greet the new arrivals, or so we thought. Just as the new company had crested Vine Hill and been sighted from the abbey, they looked to be only a head or two fewer than our current guests. Here Langrian had to stop for a moment's rest, panting slightly. Benebik would have given him something to make him sleep, but the injured monk waved away the troll's offer. Not much more to tell. One of the other brothers,
saw one of the guests come running out late from Traveller's Hall. He'd not finished donning his cloak. They were all cloaked, though the morning was warm. And beneath it there was the flash of a sword blade. The brother ran to the abbot, who had feared something of the like. Quincines went to confront the leader. Meanwhile, we could see the men riding down the hill. Rimmersmen, all bearded and braided. The abbot told the leader he and his men must put up, that St. Hodrins would not be the site of some bandit struggle. The leader pulled his sword out and put it to Quincines' throat. Merciful Adon, breathed Hengfisk. A moment later we heard hoofbeats. Brother Skinsafa suddenly ran out to the courtyard and shouted a warning to the approaching strangers. One of the guests put an arrow in his back, and the leader slit the abbot's throat. Hengfisk stifled a sob and made the sign of the tree over his heart. But Langrian's face was solemn, emotionless. He continued his narrative without pausing. Then there was carnage. Strangers leaping onto the brothers with knife and sword, or pulling bows and arrows from places of hiding. When the new arrivals came through the gate, it was with their own swords drawn. I suppose they heard Skinsafa's warning and saw him shot down in the gateway arch. I do not know what happened then, for all was madness. Someone threw a torch upon the chapel roof, and it caught fire. I ran for water as people screamed, and horses screamed, and something hit me on the head. That is all. So, you do not know who was in either of these two warring bands? Benedict asked. Did they fight with each other, or were they being partners? Langrian nodded seriously. They fought. The ambushers had a much more difficult time with them than they did with unarmed monks. That is all I can say. All I know. Me, they burn, hissed Brother Hengfisk. They shall. Langrian sighed. I think I must sleep again. He closed his eyes, but his breathing did not change. Benedict straightened up. I think I will be walking a short ways, he said. Simon nodded. Ninit Gandaka, he called, and the wolf leaped up, stretched, and followed him. He had vanished into the woods within moments, leaving Simon with the 3 monks, 2 living, 1 dead. And rather than start another section, because that ends a section, and stuff is going to start happening again very soon, I think we're going to wrap it up for the night. Excuse me. Obviously, I haven't had enough caffeine today. Anyway, so with that, I thank you all, as always, for joining me and my friend, the Metal Dragon. And I will be back tomorrow night, or tonight, really, 7 p.m., to continue reading with this section, if you can manage that. If not, it'll be available, as you know. And then I will return, as I said, if everything works out next weekend, and please check in to find out if I can broadcast the reading from my folks' place. I will be reading this same time next week. Hello. Anyway, so again, thank you very much. Be good to yourselves. Be kind to your loved ones. Be generous with those around you. And I will see you very soon. So thank you for joining me. Ciao, Bambini.